Hello, and a big, massive welcome back to the podcast, HR Hacks and Halos. We are today joined by the amazing Christina Robinson, and she is a business owner and CEO, I guess, of Green Umbrella Marketing. Now, Christina, before we get on, and I know we're going to be talking about company culture and your role as a business owner in terms of what you do for your own organization. I'm really keen to find out more about that. But perhaps I can hand over to you, first of all, just to give yourself to introduce yourself to the audience, because I know I probably haven't done you justice with my very brief intro.
Bless you. Well, Julian, it's a pleasure to be here. And I love the name of the podcast. When you first told me what it was called, I was like, it's just brilliant, because I think it says a lot. It says a lot. Okay, so who am I? Christina Robinson from Green Umbrella Marketing. I always say I'm known for three things: marketing, mindset, and mischief. And hopefully the mischief will become apparent as we go through this. You know, I started my career in hospitality, went up through the ranks, was made redundant, thought, oh crap. And through that time, I led sort of reasonable sized teams, lots of young people having all sorts of challenges, and kind of there was an HR element to that role. Went through the redundancy process, went to university as a mature student, hated it, dropped out. Yeah. It was.
We will come back to that, Christina.
Yeah, it was horrendous. And I remember sitting on my sofa thinking, like, well, what am I going to do? And the only bit I really enjoyed from the couple of years I was there was this module that we did around social media. And I knew I didn't want to go back to hospitality. I wanted I was enjoying my weekends. I was enjoying time with what was then a young family, and I didn't want to go back to that life. But there was this piece around social media, and I thought, well, maybe I can create something, just, doing a bit of social media for some businesses, doing their Facebook posts, that kind of thing. Started doing some research and found a business in existence literally 5 minutes from my doorstep. Wow. Well, within a week, they had advertised for a freelance position. I'd applied, been interviewed, and had started there. That was in 2013. 6 months later, I'm full-time on payroll and second in command of the business. And if we fast forward to 2019, we went through a management buyout where I became sole owner. And I guess when you think about HR and people development, that's what's really relevant, because when it was first tabled as an idea, I remember Julia, the founder, sort of saying, would you want to buy it? And we were walking around the building, getting our steps in at the time. And she asked me the question, and I said yes and nodded my head enthusiastically. And inside I thought, are you kidding me? Like, I thought you were the intelligent, like you're the like inspirational, entrepreneurial, clever person. Like, what a ridiculous suggestion, because my self-worth was, and my self-belief was, that less than average was the best I could be. And there's lots of, if I tell you my personal story, there's lots of reasons for why I was at that point. But life throws things at you. I was lucky enough to have someone that inspired me, that I aspired to be, and I overcame that hurdle. We went through the management buyout, and that was back in 2019, and today Green Umbrella's still going, despite what's been a really tough period economically. I am now a co-author. I have a podcast myself, Christina Talks. I do lots of mentorship with entrepreneurs from outside of the marketing sphere and a business perspective, but also it's amazing when you understand people. I think when you have those skills, and I'm sure this is something we'll come on to, when you live and breathe your culture and you're really aligned to it, it's amazing the conversations you have. And off the back of those, I'm now in what I would describe as privileged position to be a mentor to a handful of entrepreneurs, where it's not just about the business and the marketing. It's also about who they are as a person and how they overcome certain obstacles in their life or make changes in their world, and really focus on being the best versions of themselves. And it's, I hate to use the word coach because there's so many bloody coaches out there.
Yeah.
But it is, we have coaching conversations. We have conversations where I tell them to shut up, stop making excuses, give them a kick where they need it, show
Yeah.
the support, make them celebrate when they should be celebrating. And like I said, it's on the personal stuff as well as the career business stuff as well. And so that's me in a nutshell.
Yeah, that's amazing, Christina. I didn't realize there were so many different moving parts to you. Absolutely. I know about you as a CEO of Green Umbrella Marketing. And I know you as a podcaster. And of course, thank you. You've had me on your show very recently. And again, that was an amazing experience. You've got a natural way about you, which I think comes across on that podcast, and I think it's great. But I didn't realize about the whole mentorship program that you do as well. And it must be quite interesting and probably a little bit scary to be one of your mentees. I think in terms of kicking their asses and getting them going, it must be a tad scary.
Do you know when I was in a conversation on what day? Thursday. And I do a lot of work in the world of recruitment. I was talking to a recruiter I know, and he was talking about video on social media. It's like, oh yeah, I posted this video and it went really well, but I haven't done another one since. And I said, well, why not? Well, I don't know really. I was like, okay, so when are you going to do the next one? And he just looked at me and he's like, you want me to do it now, don't you? I was like, yeah. We've got 45 minutes till our meeting. It's a lovely location. You got the perfect thing to talk about, the fact you're going into this meeting and the benefits that that has to you and your client base. So yeah, let's get it done. And it's
Scary,
literally,
scary.
yeah, within 20 minutes, this post was on LinkedIn. And this
Amazing.
this this is the thing. There's so much that we procrastinate over for no other reason than we just haven't got it done yet.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's amazing. And actually, probably that was one of the best videos because you're doing it on the spur of the moment, you're not overthinking it. It's just a case of getting over yourself and over that kind of initial, I've got to do
Yeah,
what?
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
then just get on and do it. I love that. And talking of mindset, just going back to your opening and your introduction, when you were walking around the building, not only getting your steps, but also making the decision that you were going to be buying into that business, what was going through your mind? Because it's not as if, I mean, first of all, we don't always get an opportunity to do a management buyout, but also, how did you as a person kind of flick across from being an employee into, yeah, this business could be mine?
Good question. So, okay, so first of all, when I was first asked that question, I really did think, no, no way, like I can't do that. And I always describe it, it's one of those situations where you never tell someone their baby's ugly. So it's kind of one of those. I was like, no, no, no. And on the outside, it was like, yes, yes, yes. When I actually made the decision, in my personal life, there was a lot of things going on. And I kind of got to a place where the only way out, the route to getting out of the situation I was in, buying the business felt very much like the only way I could get onto that track.
Right.
Now, what happened between those two things was essentially the investment I had as an employee from the person above me. So everything from the development, from a skills perspective, mentally, just the encouragement that I received, being put into positions that made me incredibly uncomfortable. One of the things I missed is I'm a public speaker. I'm always on a bloody stage. Like every week I'm on a stage. Tomorrow I'm on a stage in Manchester. However, that started because I was put in an uncomfortable position
Yeah.
where someone had faith in me that I didn't yet have in myself. They
Mm,
saw the potential I didn't see.
yeah.
And I think I've been in a few situations in my life where that's kind of someone else saw in me something that I didn't.
Mm,
And I think that's become a big part of the culture that I create and the way that I work with people.
yeah. Yeah.
It's, bring someone, someone comes into my team and I'm like, right, okay, they've come in to do this role, but what are they what are they able to do? What can they do already that's maybe outside of that role? Where's the potential? And let's work to that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, quite often people come into teams that I'm heading up, and they end up doing something that's quite different to the job description because I play to their skills.
Yeah.
I play to the parts that make them their happiest, and that's what works. For me, that's how to get the best out of people. And I've learnt that because that's what happened to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And that is such a crucial point that you raised there, that we don't go into the workplace as as vanilla people. We all have different skill sets. We have different abilities, different interests, different values. And you have to, as a business owner, as a line manager, play to those values and beliefs and strengths and interests in order to get the best out of people. You can't use a cookie cutter approach because that isn't going to work. And I think that's where a lot of businesses actually and managers potentially go wrong, because they kind of like, we've got a job to do, we need someone to do it. They try and hire the best they can, but then they're expecting to get the best out of someone when you're trying to put a square peg in a round hole, and it just doesn't work. And I think sometimes that's where the where the breakdowns happen, that they haven't spent long enough really getting to understand what the individual wants and what really that makes them tick. And actually the job isn't necessarily going to do that. And that's very much the business owner's kind of thing to be doing, and the line manager's thing to be doing. But before we go too far down along that path, let me just take you back again to when you decided to do the management buyout. What was it about the business that kind of that you really thought, yeah, this one's got legs and this one I'm going to invest in?
So I knew it inside out. I
Mm.
was running it already. In terms of day-to-day operation, um, the only thing I didn't have access to was the bank account at that point.
Right.
So I was so embedded in it. But again, it's like, how do you go from a couple of hours a day as a freelancer into that position? It's someone being willing to share this stuff with you, see where your interest lies, see where curiosity lies. And I got really curious, really curious. I took it on myself. I went to work and did stuff there, and then I got home, and I would, in the evenings, I'd be doing all sorts of training courses to deepen my knowledge. So the learning track I then went on was kind of accelerated because of my curiosity. And initially, that curiosity was all around the marketing piece.
Mm.
It's like I didn't do much with Pinterest, so I was doing courses on Pinterest to understand that. I'd not really done a lot of email marketing. So I went hell for leather understanding, what's the anatomy of a solid email campaign, and,
Yeah.
all this sort of stuff. And it was like, okay, where are my knowledge gaps? Let's get them filled. And then, although the world of social media and online marketing is crazy, it moves at such a pace, there are certain things that always remain, like the tech changes and there's
Mm.
tweaks to the algorithm, but the foundations remain the same. So you end up at this point where you've consumed so much information that the information starts to repeat itself. Well, then
Yeah.
my curiosity went, okay, well, if we've got a well-oiled machine, if the boat's going as fast as it can, how do we get a bigger boat? So then I started to get curious about business growth and the whole, actually, how are we marketing ourselves? What's our sales process look like in terms of the clients we have and how we're looking after them? How can we bring more value to them? And started to play and tweak and look at processes and strengthen those. And the more I did, the more excited about it I became. And of course, when you focus on something, your energy is automatically applied there, results come.
Yeah.
you know
Yeah.
re- re- the
Absolutely.
results come. And
Yeah.
this is like marketing stuff. You can't do your marketing half-assed. You've got to
Yeah.
be all in with it, right? I mean, people outsource their social media management to us, and they can't. It's like you got the logins, you just crack on, and the results, they come, but they come really slowly. Whereas the clients, where I'm like, can you do a video on this, can you send me a photo of that, and we get it. Where those ones that are all in, irrelevant of how they feel about it, God, she's asked me to do a video again. Okay, I'll get it done by the end of the day. And we get it. those that, like, we've got one client that have literally, we started with them in December 23, and they'd hit their 2024 annual goal by the time we were 5 months in,
Wow.
because they went all, like, everything we
Yeah.
asked. It was like, yes, Christina, yes, Christina, yes, Christina. But this is, like I said, this is what happens. You're curious, you get excited, you focus on it, you give it the energy, and it grows.
Mm.
And, in this scenario, my interest in the business grew, my abilities grew. I'm pretty damn good at what I do.
Well, absolutely, absolutely.
And I think I'm also, a lot of that is, I'm not afraid to, if I'm risk averse, okay, I don't have a high risk tolerance, but I'm happy to try something because I don't know it hasn't worked until I've tried it.
Mm.
And if it's not working, I'll be the first one to call it. I go, right,
Yeah,
that didn't work. Let's pull it. Let's do something new.
yeah,
And I think that's part of what makes me good at what I do.
yeah, yeah. I love that. For someone who is risk averse, you went all in to buy a business that and become a business owner, something that you hadn't done before.
I know it's crazy when I think about it. But like I said, I felt like I was doing it already.
Yeah, yeah. Instinctively, you knew it was the right thing to be doing, which
Yeah,
I'm a big believer in. What does the inside say to you? If it feels right, just go for it, because what's the
yeah.
worst that can happen? You may have to rethink in a year or so.
Sometimes the fear is I can't do it. Sometimes I can't not do it is a
Mm,
bigger fear. And I think if I really, like, if I were to go back and observe myself in that moment and feel what I was feeling at the time, I think it was more the fear of not doing it. That
right.
was the bigger
Yes.
fear.
Yes, yes. You were so consumed with excitement for it that actually the bigger fear was, "Oh my goodness, I may not get this opportunity." So there was a fear of loss in a way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Fear of loss, fear of change.
Yes, yes, yeah, absolutely. How big was your team at that time then when you took ownership?
I think there were about 12, yeah, 10 or 12 then.
Right, okay.
Yeah, the biggest the team got was about 20.
Right, okay. Okay.
That's the biggest we've been.
And how did you manage that transition then? Because the team would have seen you as a freelancer back then, and now suddenly you are the new boss. How did you manage that transition?
Well, I was only a freelancer for the first 6 months.
Right.
So we had a good period of time. And during that period of time, there was quite heavy growth.
Yes.
So at the point that I bought the business, most of the employees I'd taken through the recruitment process.
Okay. Yeah.
So I'd interviewed them, I'd done the job offer, I'd onboarded them, I was doing their one-to-ones, all that kind of stuff. So things were already in place, probably because of, like I said, back in the hospitality days, very early on, I made that mistake of being mates with the people in your team.
Yeah.
But, it being one of the gang and then being elevated into a leadership position and had to deal with that change in dynamics. And it was
Yeah.
it was a tough lesson that stayed, although I was very young at the time, it was a tough lesson that stayed with me.
Yeah. 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 Tell me more about that as an example, because actually that is something that a lot of managers kind of get exposed to. They are part of a team, and then suddenly one of them gets elevated. It can cause all sorts of issues and disruption for the people that aren't now part of that, at one time the boss was their colleague, and now that distance can be quite difficult to have to manage. How did you do that?
Badly at the time, very badly. So, okay, let's talk about the mistakes I made at
Yeah.
that time. So you work together, you hang out together, you talk about issues together. It was being in that work environment. And then, I was in my, what was I, about 20, 21 at the time. So it's like you work together, you go to the club together, and all sorts would go on. And of course, you're going into work the next day knowing what's happened overnight and knowing things you shouldn't know. Sometimes it's hard to really keep that. It shouldn't just be a line of this is work and that's social. There needs to be a gap there. So I
Yeah.
think that was the first lesson. You have to maintain some form of gap,
Yeah.
because even if you don't take action, even if you don't say anything, that person that you're now essentially responsible for, they're kind of waiting for it to drop. They're
Yes.
waiting
Yeah.
for that, so that it creates this kind of anxiety in the air. So that was really difficult. Then the general chattering, and so if someone has a grumble with something, especially new into a leadership position, your responsibilities change, and part of your responsibilities is to fix problems in the team. And so there were some situations where things would be said, and they'd be said a few times, and I'd be like, right, I'm going to fix that, I'm going to sort that, or actually it just needed to be left alone.
Yes.
It was just one of the, nothing is ever going to be a perfect environment. And sometimes, I actually believe sometimes we need a little bit of friction. That little bit of friction. Now, you've got to be careful, but sometimes a little bit of friction creates a situation where everyone's striving to do better.
Yeah.
So
So a
it's
little bit of
that,
competition, you mean, by the
yeah,
friction? Yeah.
yeah, it could be a bit of competition. It could be that little bit of friction is encouraging people to think in a different way, to be more creative, to allow themselves to be more effective. Sometimes a little bit of friction creates some situations for the team to resolve,
Mm.
which in fact empowers them. So sometimes a little bit of friction is actually a good thing. But I was there trying to iron out every wrinkle.
Yes. Yeah.
And then there's the flip side where it's someone just having a moan and there's no wrinkle to be ironed out.
Mm.
And you end up creating something instead. You end
Yes.
up trying to fix something that isn't broken. So I think that's the they're the big things really for me when I think back to the lessons I took with me.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it is very much about, I'm not talking about being distant from your team, because I don't believe in that either, but it is maintaining some form of a gap.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think you were promoted too young in that, got you there?
Yeah. Do you know what? No. However, I think that's a very individual answer.
Mhm.
So at that point, I'd left home at 16. I had 4 years of life experience as an adulting under my belt. So, the responsibility of, paying your, and I'd already, I had a child as well at that point. My daughter was just, about a year old as
Gosh.
well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's if I look at it from an age perspective, 20 is young to be put into any form of leadership position. However, as an individual, you know, 4 years of paying your rent, got a young family, that kind of thing. No. So it's a very this is why sort of diversity, inclusion, equity, all of these things are so important, because it's not just about going, well, she's 20, so she should or shouldn't be able to. It's about actually looking at the individual and
Mm.
saying, okay, social mobility would have, probably wasn't even terminology that was used back then, but from a social mobility perspective, I was absolutely the right candidate when you look at it from a DEI perspective.
Yeah. Yeah. But when you think about it in terms of, but you're right. You as a 21-year-old, you already had a child, you already had left home, you were paying rent, as you say. There was a level of maturity that perhaps you had as a 21-year-old that maybe other 21-year-olds may not have, because who weren't necessarily as mature or had as much life experience perhaps that you had at that time. So maybe there was that was a natural progression for you. And simply 21 is just a number, isn't it, at the end of the day?
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's fast forward then to green umbrella marketing. So here you are, you're now the owner manager, you've been involved, you were there already for a period of time, your team around you had already kind of been working with you for a period of time, and here you are now as the owner. What did you, in terms of the culture that was already there under the previous ownership, did you want to make a change, or did you just sort of like everything was okay as it was? It was just that you were now the owner, and you were going to be sort of like taking things as they were going forward.
The culture was good.
Mm.
What I wanted to do was ensure that it was solid.
Right. What do you mean by that?
So change in leadership at that level is going to create some shift. So I really did just want to bring everything together.
Yeah.
And I did a lot of work around, first of all, myself, like, okay, what is the culture? Is it a culture that needs to change, or is it like, what am I doing to support that culture? And I probably spent a good 12 months, as well as running the business and doing the family stuff and everything else. Actually, this is where my curiosity went next. And I kind of found that I think we're probably about a year in, and I did a piece of work with the team because I felt actually, the culture's good, but it's almost like it's my culture. It was our culture, and then it kind of developed into my culture
Yeah.
whilst I was doing this work. And I thought I just need to do a piece of work to ensure that it is inclusive,
Yes.
that it's not me as a leader imposing my will on a team
Yeah.
and thinking that everyone's on board, but actually do a piece of work so that everyone could self-identify as being on board.
That's
Everyone could
interesting.
see where the alignment was,
Yeah.
and just really bring things together in
Yeah.
that sense. So I took the team for an offsite for the day, and we did some, like I said, marketing and mindset, right? The
Yeah.
two of my big three things. So this day, it was kind of like, we're going to do a strategy day. And I think they were expecting more stuff around, sales figures and, developing products and services and that kind of thing. What I did instead was essentially take them through the exercise of Wheel of Life as individuals.
Okay.
So what it wasn't about, there was crossover into the business, but it's okay, you as a person, what do things look like for you? Where are you now? Where do you want to be? What does success look like?
Hmm.
And even financially, where are you now? Financially, where do you need to be in order to achieve those things? And like, write down the numbers. And you're going to share those numbers with me so I can figure out how to get you there. So we did that. We did another did that. And I explained how, the purpose of this business, that the purpose for me is to ensure that I'm living the life I want to lead, which means leading a team of people that get to live the life they want to lead. So that's only going to work if we're aligned, if we're all moving towards the same thing, which brought us into a values exercise.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I did the simplest thing. I was like, okay, what are your values? Forget about the business. You as an individual, what are your values?
Hmm.
Here's the opportunity to learn about each other. And I had loads of Post-it notes. I'd got a slide on the screen with, like, I don't know, like 40, 50 values written on there. And I was like, just write down your values, have as many as few as, don't get me wrong, if you've got 25 values, it's probably too many, but like, what are your most important values? Write down the ones that are most important, put on a bit of music. And I said, if there's a word not up there that's a better word for you, use that word. So they spent a few minutes doing that. And I said, right, everyone goes over to the wall, and it's like, first person sticks their values up. Second person sticks theirs up. I said, but when there's something that correlates, let's create a pile. And it was really, and by the time we got to like the fourth person, like everyone was doing theirs. It's like, oh, has anyone got this? Has anyone got that? Oh, no. I'll start a new pile for that. And so it became this group exercise of everyone kind of like almost playing snap with values, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
But very, very quickly, you could just see, like, visually, you could see it form.
Hmm.
And people going, well, actually, this is here and that's there, but they're kind of the same thing. So let's put those two together. And off the back of that exercise, we came up with our 6 values. But they were values that existed already in the business.
Yeah.
There were, because the thing is, all of our values exist in the business.
Hmm.
All the values of every individual, whatever level they're at, exist in the business.
Yeah.
Our job is to understand what are the values that are driving us most. Well, what are the values where there's the most crossover within the team? And that's what we pushed forward. And it was things like honesty and integrity, creativity, growth and success became very interlinked.
Mm.
And it was a really beautiful exercise, because off of the back of that, it was like, okay, well, what does growth and success mean? And
Mm.
as a team, created all these statements around them as well, which we did the typical thing that businesses do, which is we had lovely posters printed and they went up on the wall in the office. But the difference is because the team had ownership of them, and like they, honestly, I think every team member, when they looked at those posters, they all felt like that was my value, that was my value, that's what I brought to that's what I brought to our values. And so they were very much alive, and things would happen, stories would be told. Someone sharing a piece of, we had an open, we all work from home now, but we had an open plan office at the time. And, you know, someone's working on a design on the computer screen and like, what do you think to this? And someone else go, oh my God, that's so creative. And someone else in the office would like be pointing at the poster going, see, creativity, creativity. And it was I remember one day there was a phone call and it was a client ringing up to say thank you because we'd done something, they'd got a fantastic result, they called to share us. And, you know, the person put down the phone and was like, oh my God, this has just happened. It's like, what a success. And it's like, hey, success. And that's when your values are alive. That's when you know everyone is bought in.
Yes.
And I think that's what breeds culture. The culture comes from that alignment.
Mm.
So it's, like I said, it started off me doing that work for myself as an individual. You know, back then, health wasn't a value for me back then. It isn't a value for me now, but vitality is.
Mm.
Now, for me to maintain my vitality, making sure I'm going to the gym and I'm, you know, thinking about nutrition and breathing and, you know, I do all this stuff, mindset stuff that supports my vitality because I know how I want to live my life. How much of that comes into business? Well, not a huge amount. So vitality isn't going to be one of Green Umbrella Marketing's values, but how I play out in that personal value impacts my business world.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. What I love about what you've just said there, Christina, is that you recognize that values have changed. So, you know, the values that were pulled together when you first took ownership and everyone was together and they developed them and they took ownership of them. They were there, they were able to create the framework, I suppose, of what green umbrella marketing is going to be all about and the values that everyone was going to share. But recognizing that as time goes on, those values will shift and they will morph. One, as the business grows and shapes, and also as the individuals kind of move on and new individuals start joining your team. It is always going to be an evolution. Having said that, always reflecting back on the broader and the original values and just kind of seeing how those are evolving forward and evolving those with your business and with your team as you move on. I think that's a great analogy that you've just painted there in terms of they live and they breathe with you, don't they, in terms of your
Yeah.
business? They're not there as something that just gets old and dusty and just a visual on a board, because quite often that's what happens in businesses. They spend all that investment in terms of getting it ready, getting it done, everyone buys into it, and then all they do is just sit on a shelf somewhere and
Yeah.
go to.
When I think about growth as a value, like the imagery we used for that is, you know, typical, you know, arrow going upwards. It kind of
Yeah.
represents fiscal growth, okay, data growth. But actually, growth for us has always been so much more than that. There's someone leaving the team; it's their last day today,
Yeah.
and essentially they're going setting up their own business.
Wow.
What fantastic growth is it? Now, don't get me
Not a
wrong,
social
I
media
am.
marketing agency somewhere.
It is, and it's like they've kind of come in, like when I think about where this individual was when they started, from a confidence, self-worth perspective, everything that, like, the knowledge they've gained, the sense of self that they've gained, their, like I said, the self-worth, the self-worth, the self-love that they now have has enabled
Yes.
them to go, like, actually, I can do this.
Mm.
And again, they've had that curiosity in terms of, like, that there's a certain direction they want to, there's a particular thing they want to do and they want to do it in a certain way. And I'm like, devastated that they're going, because I've been a massive part of their journey and I've seen them do so much, and I know how, like, I can see how much more that they can do.
Mm.
So I'm devastated. At the same time, I'm like, Christina, you did a good job.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I always want people that come into my, like, wherever I've been, wherever I've had teams, it's like, you start with me here and you leave with me there.
Mm.
And if you are the same person when you left as when you started, I'm not a good leader.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can hand on heart say that this person's life is better today than it was 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Hand on heart say that. And I'm not saying it's all my doing. Absolutely not. Like, they've done all the work, but I've been there along the way to kind of do what I do with the clients that I mentor now. But, you know, kick them when they need it, hug
Yeah.
them when they need it, laugh with them, cry with them, create that space when they've needed it.
Yeah.
It stood next to them when they've needed me to stand next to them. You know, it's, for me, that's what leadership is.
Yeah. Yeah. And it sounds like you've championed them as well. You found what really gets them to grow and change and become who they want to be, and you've championed that. And that's really refreshing and great to hear.
Do you know, I can bring that down to quite a simple thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, bring your whole self to work. Okay. I say that and I mean that. I remember us going to an event and they're like, "What? Oh, you know, what do you want me to wear?" I'm like, "What do you mean? What do I want you to wear? Like, come as you. Bring your whole self. If someone doesn't want to work with us because you wear shorts rather than black skinny jeans, well, to be
Mm.
honest, they're not the right client for me.
Yeah.
I don't.
Mm.
You know, I rock up in places, and, you know, I like to look nice and presented and all that kind of stuff. But there's always, you know, my nail polish is chipped, or I haven't straightened my hair, or, you know, something's like, I've never gone as far as like odd shoes, but I have rocked up with my shirt inside out. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
it's like there's always something that's not quite right with
Yeah.
me.
The original rock chick, slightly rebellious.
That's, you know, and then I think this is it. This is it. It's like, sometimes this is where the mischief is.
Mm.
I wear a lot of green from a brand perspective. I wear a lot of green, and I wear it with pride because I love my brand.
Yeah.
And every now and then I'll be out somewhere and they're like, "Oh, Christina, you're not wearing green." I was like, "You want to check out the underwear?" That's where the mischief comes in, right? But it's a, be you, bring your
Yeah.
whole self to work.
Yeah.
And when people realize that actually it's not an invitation, it's an instruction, just be apologetically you, and they're able to do that, actually they start to champion themselves.
What about when things are not so rosy? So you've got a great team, you've got a very enthusiastic team by the sounds of it. And in terms of your leadership style, in terms of how you've made them grow and move forward with you as a business owner, has been really, really great. But share with me when things don't go right. How do you deal with that?
Okay, so it's a simple question. What's going on?
Mm.
What's going on? And you have to be prepared for any and all answers.
Yeah.
Because sometimes the answer is, I just don't get it, I feel lost. And that's a training issue. Sometimes the answer is, you know, me and my boyfriend haven't been getting on so well, and, you know, there's a bit of, you know, love and support required. Sometimes it's much deeper than that. Sometimes it's, you know, I had one experience where it was a young girl in my prior to Green Umbrella, there was a young girl in my team, and she was just dropping every ball possible.
Mm.
She was an absolute star, and then just fell off a cliff. And it was like, okay, performance-wise, and you're like, okay, well, you know, and I just said, what's going on? Not, are you okay?
Yeah.
Right? It's what's going on.
Mm.
Very different question. What's
Yeah.
going on? And if you feel like you're getting a kind of surface level answer, it's like, okay, what else is going on?
Yeah.
What's really going on? But in this scenario, her mother had been involved in a road accident and someone had lost their life. And unfortunately, mother was, going through court proceedings and sentencing and all that kind of stuff, and just her and her mum. And she's a young girl, and she was like, I don't know what happens if. And it was looking more and more like her mother would be serving some sort of sentence.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of fear, huge amount of fear. I've had employees where it's been related to the issue, and you kind of have to have those conversations as well. And it's easy. It's so easy to kind of go, well, it's not my problem. They're here to
Yeah.
do a job. And if they can't do the job, go
Yeah.
find something else.
Yeah.
I'll find someone else. But this is maybe one of my downsides to the way that I lead, is I get I care deeply. If I don't care deeply about you, you're never going to work as part of my team. It's not about being able to connect with someone. It's about making a connection.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not about understanding that they want to drive whatever car, and they want to have a 4-bed house, and they want to have, they've just got married and they want to have 2.4 kids.
Yeah.
It's about really understanding them,
Yeah.
understanding the things that make them anxious, understanding how they behave when they're anxious.
Yeah. Yeah.
Understanding understanding what makes them feel joyful. It's when you understand people at that level, that's when you can bring the best out of them.
Yeah.
But in those difficult times, it's having to deal with it from that perspective as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, I've then coached these people through these scenarios. That this particular, the girl with the issue with her mother, I just scheduled her shifts differently.
Mm-hmm.
She would finish an hour before everyone else, and at the end of the shift, she'd have to come up to my office, and we would talk for 20 minutes, half an hour. Sometimes it was 5 minutes, 10 minutes. But at the end of each shift, and she probably did like she was part-time, 3-4 shifts a week, there was space. But that space, knowing she was going to get that space, I don't know, maybe it just gave her another reason to make sure that she had a good shift.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, what does she need? Well, she needs a bit of care, a bit of attention, a little bit of stability, really. We spend so much time at work. Of course, that's somewhere we get our stability. So it's like, well, what does this person actually need? How can we create that?
Yeah. Yeah.
The one particular person dealing with addiction, and it was, we went through the HR procedures a few times. I had the conversation, what's going on? Things would I've just had a bit of a blowout at the weekend. It all got a bit crazy, but I'm back on it now. Okay, cool, great. No issues. 6 months later, it happens again. Okay, well, you got to explain, like, what's happening now? What's really going on?
Yeah.
And you can do that a couple of times. And if those conversations don't have effects, then you do need to go through procedure. And it's heart-wrenching. It's tough. It's tough to sit there across the table with your HR, with Jeevan next to you, saying to someone, like, you're on the brink of losing your job.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's, and have those discussions, and, and especially when it's something relating to mental health, because you don't know what else is at play. You only know what they share with you.
Exactly. And I want to explore this point just a little bit further, if I may, because there may be some people who are listening who say, well, Christine, it's all very well for Christina. She's only got a small team, but our business is much bigger. And I don't have as much time to be able to get and do all of that end of shift conversation and to do all of that level of care that you're talking about, because I have a much bigger team. How would you respond to people who have got slightly different, have got different circumstances, different corporate makeup? How would you respond to their needs and how they should work as leaders?
So it's about putting the resources in place. So, at that point, I had probably about 30 people in my team. Within that, there were on this particular occasion, because of my past life experiences, when I was younger, my dad was in prison. So I understood where she was. So I took that on.
Yeah.
If it had been another time, we had a girl who'd had a termination and was struggling with it afterwards. So my assistant manager, it's like, okay, we need to buddy you up with that person. I've buddied people up employee to employee before. Okay, so it's about what resources can we put in place.
Yeah.
I've arranged for courses for people. It's, it's every organisation, irrelevant of size, should have some, even if it's your mental health first aider, every organisation should have something in place. However, if you are a leader, if you consider yourself to be a leader and you don't have any employees, there's no one answering to you, but you feel you're a leader, go and do the work. Go and get curious about this stuff. Go and understand the psychology of people. Go and understand the little signals that. Go and do some work understanding your intuition. Because you do it all the time. You talk to us. You're stood in line at the supermarket, and you get this feeling, and you look back behind you, and there's someone like 3 behind you, and you just got this feeling that like maybe they're not quite. Something's just not right. We're wired to notice it.
We are. Yeah, that's
and
true.
Sometimes I remember once, what's going on, and they just burst into tears, right? They just needed a hug.
Yeah.
That's all it took, is a hug.
Yeah.
And we had a chat and we laughed about the fact they didn't even know why they were crying. And it was like, it just absolutely lifted their spirits.
Yeah. Yeah. Just that connection in that moment.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Sometimes it's just about learning to ask the right, some of this stuff is what you don't have to get to a point where something happens. Sometimes asking the right questions can just raise something before it becomes an issue.
Exactly. Yeah.
One of my favourite questions to ask at one-to-one, and you can't do it every one-to-one, you just got to throw it in unexpectedly. Okay. When's the last time you laughed till you cried? It's a brilliant question.
It is a brilliant question
to ask your team, because do you know what, Jeevan? You just laughed straight away.
Yeah.
Okay. Imagine asking that question to someone who just goes cold, who immediately starts to tear up. What's going on there?
Yeah.
What would make you really happy? You want to know what people want out of life? What would make you really happy?
Yeah.
Very rarely do people tell you what car they want to buy next.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah.
They might tell you they're desperate for children, but actually it's, they've been trying and it's not happening. It's okay, well now, they might have to go down a route in order to make that happen. That means they're going to require a bit more time off work, a bit more support. When it happens, forewarned is forearmed.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And as a line manager, as a business owner, as a boss, it's what I'm hearing is that you're building relationship almost, aren't you, in terms of every single person that works with you. You know them, you know what makes them tick, you know what makes them happy, you know what makes them productive. I don't get any bullshit from you. It is, I know you and I'm going to help and support and help to elevate you to be the best person that you can. And I think that is such an admirable quality in a leader, because I think probably one of the hardest things is for people when they are in that position is knowing their team, is building their relationships, because the insights you get from those relationships can be the make or break in terms of your business, because they're the ones who are going to be delivering all of the things that you need from that business ultimately.
Yeah. And I'd say the stronger those bonds are, the stronger those relationships are, the easier it actually becomes to go, did you do this yesterday? Knowing that they haven't. Like this client said that they haven't got that. And you get the response straight away. And it's very few times I can recall that I've been like, someone's tried to cover up they haven't done something.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like because they're so used to talking straight to you, because you talk straight to them, that it just happens.
Yeah. Yeah. It also makes it easier because you've got that relationship and because you are so involved with everyone, when it comes to things like setting KPIs or targets or having to ask people to work certain times, that conversation becomes easier because you've already done so much of the hard work. You've got to know them. You've got to know their boundaries, what you can and can't do, and to encourage beyond those boundaries, because sometimes we have to go beyond those when we're in a working environment. How does that work? So, for example, I want to, there are certain changes that are coming through, like, the 4-day week or, workers' rights and all these sorts of things that I hear a lot of business owners are kind of almost frightened of because it means they have to engage in a different level. They have to look at different flexible ways of doing things now and being more creative, which they don't really, to be honest, really want to do, but they're going to have to do so. I just wonder how you as a business owner, how you're reacting to some of the changes that are beginning to come through now.
So I think flexibility is at the heart of everything we do.
Mm.
So it's just something else we need to be flexible around. And it really is. It's as simple as that. Okay, well, this is coming in. These are the changes we need to make. And as a team, how do we make those changes? What's going to work for everyone? Like, I've got some suggestions, but what's everyone else thinking? And it's kind of, if there is something like that, it's like, right, this is happening. We need to talk about it. It's Monday. We're going to talk about it Thursday morning. I'd like everyone to bring some ideas. And again, because from the creativity we have in the culture, it's like people then get like the team are talking amongst themselves.
Yeah.
Every time I've been through that exercise, it's one idea that's been presented to me because they've already had their little chit chats at the coffee machine, and it's like they've already come up with a solution.
Yeah.
And it's for me then as a leader to go, well, if we look at that idea, what about this aspect? What about that aspect? And it's like I then tweak it. I don't actually have to come up with the idea itself.
Yeah. Yeah.
I might have started it, or when I framed it, I was thinking we could do something like this or something like this or something like this. But let's talk about it on Thursday. You guys have a think as well. And it will be, oh, you said about this, Christina. So like, what if we did that, but we did it this way? And so again, it's about that cohesion.
Yeah. Yeah. It becomes then a joint problem, doesn't it? Let's all work on this together. It doesn't just fall on your shoulders as a leader to have to come up with all of the answers and impose things. If it's discussed jointly as a team, actually the resolution is going to be far more palatable because the team will have worked it through in terms of what will happen, what doesn't need to happen. Even things like targets, for example. I know we all have our own individual targets that we need to meet in order to make the organizational goals. But actually, there is always going to be some flex and some scope within that. And it's about a joint solution to any problems that come up. If, they're either, too challenging or they've been too easy and they're not stretching enough, whatever that problem is, there's always a solution if you're prepared to kind of look at it as as a team to look at what we can do to resolve it together.
Absolutely. I definitely think framing it is quite an important step because it's like anything else. If I give you a blank piece of paper and ask you to write me a story, you're like, oh, where do I start? Once upon a time, and then you're lost.
What story? What's it about?
Whereas if there's 4 headings on that piece of paper, it becomes much easier for you to write that story. So it's like, but framing it gives a starting point.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm always one for frameworks. I love a framework, I do. Being a consultant at heart. So, Christina, it's been an absolute joy talking to you today. It's been really wonderful to find out more about your thoughts on leadership, how you are and how you work with your team. It must be a very happy ship, Green Umbrella Marketing, in terms of everything that you've described. It sounds like the team run you rather than the other way around. You kind of just leave them to get on with it by the sounds of it.
We run each other. We really do. We run each other. And like I said, it is that whole bring your whole self to work is what puts the icing on the cake. It
Yeah,
really does.
absolutely. Because quite often these things can just be sort of sound bites, but actually it sounds like you've really breathed some huge amounts of life into it, and it's more than just a sound bite in your organization. It sounds like it's a real living thing, and that's so refreshing to hear. So, Christina, if any of my listeners want to get hold of you, whether they want to find out more about Green Umbrella Marketing and what you can do to help their business, how can we reach out to you?
So the Green Umbrella website, green-umbrella.biz. If you look under the menu, there's a goodies page, lots and lots of freebies under there if you need to market your business. The podcast is Christina Talks.
Ooh,
So you'll be able to find me on Instagram, Christina_talks. You'll find me on LinkedIn as Christina Robinson. So yeah, they're the best places to stay up to date with what I'm doing, get some
brilliant.
marketing hacks, and just be in my little bubble of the
Be in the
world.
marketing glow for a little. And what if they want to be a mentee? Because you said you do some of that mentoring work as well.
Yeah, just reach out to me on LinkedIn. Yeah,
Right.
drop me a DM on LinkedIn and we can have a chat there. And like I said, it's employee, business owner. Um, yeah, if you kind of feel like you're going through the motions, basically, if you feel like you're going through the motions and you know you could be happier than you are, let's have a chat.
Oh, that's wonderful. Christina, thank you again so much for your time. It's been so lovely to have you on the podcast, and you've been very, very generous with your time and with your thoughts this afternoon. So on that, I will let you have the rest of the day back. So thank you again.
You're welcome, Jeevan. It's been a pleasure joining you. Thank you.
Thank you. Wow.